morning. On this bowl of Question Crunch, Unholy Rosaries is here to talk about their gorgeously satanic artwork, answering questions about their history with making jewelry, spooky art shows, and pocket altars for Saint Nick.
So prior to starting recording, we were talking about soup. And I know I said we might bring that up later in the conversation, but I really want to talk about soup right now.
Okay, sounds good.
The weather is just perfect. I'm looking outside and I see the gray clouds. And you mentioned that it was soup weather, that you're gonna make soup, and I got really excited because you know what? I can go make soup. I might go make soup. I don't know. We'll see. Or buy soup. We'll find out. Or pho. I might go get pho. That might be a
Oh,
thing.
fuzz, like a king of soups for sure.
What soup are you planning on making?
So I'm gonna make like a creamy chicken, like gnocchi sort of deal. I save like a bazillion like recipes off of TikTok, and I want to start making my way through them because I just haven't had time to actually try something new in a while. And that soup has just been calling my name because it's kind of like it's one of those busy mom meals, and I'm like, great. I don't gotta like hand make every single thing. I can use a couple prepackaged things, but still, chop my own veggies and heat them in olive oil. And it's a little bit. It still feels like a homemade soup, but I don't have to go through like a crazy amount of prep.
Is TikTok good for finding recipes?
Very good. Very good. The algorithm will basically give you all of the videos that you like tend to watch. So if you sit there and sit all the way through like a recipe video that you like it, maybe you comment on it, it's just going to feed you all of the recipe videos. And I get a lot of them, and I do get a lot that I want to try. I think I have like 96 recipe videos saved now.
Now the recipe videos, do they give you like the description of what you need, or do you have to watch the whole video and write that stuff down?
It depends on the creator. Some creators are really good about like giving you exact measurements and the things that they used, how they used them. Some people just make like aesthetic cooking videos, so
Mhm.
they'll just make something, and then maybe they'll post a recipe in the comment section, or maybe they have a link to their website. And sometimes they just straight up don't post a recipe at all, and those are the ones I don't tend to go for, especially for the people who like flex on how well they can make a steak, or this crazy thing that like no person can make because you need like hundreds of dollars of kitchen equipment. I'm like, that's not really my vibe necessarily.
I'm just thinking that that would be really funny to be really into a recipe video, and then they're like, "All right, now all you need is this golden geese," and you're like, "Ah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
never mind. I guess I'm not making that because all I've got is spoons."
Oh God, right? Like, I also do this to myself because I save for some reason I've been really obsessed with Korean recipe videos. So all these this amazing like Korean cooking, I'm like, oh, I would love to try that, but it's not like I can just zip out to the store and get gochujang and gochugaru and all of this stuff that I don't normally cook with and is not normally in my pantry. Plus, like, I'm not gonna spend all of this money on ingredients that I'm not going to use every day. But at the same time, I'm like, "Oh, that looks so good. Maybe one day I will take a trip to LA and go to one of the Korean grocery stores and get all the stuff I need. Maybe one day it'll happen." I don't know. Maybe I have too much optimism at this point.
Speaking of making stuff,
Mm.
we met via Zoom, and I always love when I'm in a Zoom and I see someone working on something because I'm just always a fan of any kind of artistic endeavor. And I just remember seeing the camera of you with your hands off screen. I'm like, oh, there's something being made. I need to know what that thing is. And it was a pocket altar.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that was when I was, like, making more of those for sure. I haven't made them in a few months now, but I miss making those. They're so fun.
Why haven't you made them in months, if you don't mind me asking? I mean, it could just be lack of resources. I'm not sure.
Oh boy. It's a couple of things. The main one being that my job basically kicked it up a notch, and I was working more hours, more hours than I'd signed on for. I said I wanted a part-time, and they just slowly increased my hours until I was working full-time every single day. And it's a much more high intensity job than I was expecting. So I would come home exhausted and I just flop down and have no energy for pretty much anything. So that's why my shop was actually very poorly stocked for a very long time. So it burned out my creative juices for a good while there too, and I just hadn't made them in a while. Like I even wanted to make some for the last Blasphemy, the last craft fair that I did. And I was just cranking out necklaces and bracelets. I was just like, I just got to get my sellers out there. If I have time, I'll make an altar. And I just didn't get to it.
Capitalism will do that.
Oh, God,
We'll
yeah.
do it on capitalism will do that on two things I want to comment on. One, big businesses will gradually make you work more hours, and I always tell people, I'm like, don't do that thing, because if you do that thing, they'll assume that's now your new responsibility and will get mad if you stop doing that thing. So businesses are not the nicest, so don't do that thing unless you're paid more to do it. The other thing, after work exhaustion is nuts.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, but before, when I was working, maybe I think like 25 to 30 hours a week, it was not as bad. I would come home exhausted for sure, but I was like, I can still cook, I can still pick up my stuff, I can still work on my jewelry for a few hours, whatever. But after that, like all my ability to just do basic maintenance flew out the window, and I had a really hard time getting back on my feet after that. It was so stressful.
So I love the pocket altars because I did grow up on Mighty Max, and so I had the toy of opening it up and having like a small little adventure inside of it. So when you showed me the pocket altar, that is ridiculously inspiring, and I think
Mhm.
about it quite often. I think about it like,
Really?
yeah,
Oh, that's awesome.
it's a lot of times where I'm just like, damn, those are so cool, and they're in the Altoid tins.
Yes.
And it's absolutely amazing. Where did the idea of having a pocket altar?
All right. So, I
Oh,
don't
hold
know.
on.
Oh, yeah.
I just realized that I keep on saying this stuff. What
Sure.
is a pocket altar?
Oh, pocket altar. Right. Should actually get to the basics first. All right. So, a pocket altar is just a miniature portable shrine, and it can be for any religion basically. So, usually there is an icon that the shrine is dedicated to, and occasionally they'll come with like a little something extra, right? So my pocket altars happen to be satanic because that's how we do things over here on this side of spirituality or whatever.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Exactly. So mine are very
You're definitely not
classic
the first.
satanic.
You're definitely not the first Satanist that's been on this podcast, but
Awesome. Okay. But yeah, that's the stuff that inspires me. So I make them satanic, and of course I'm in the satanic community, so I knew there was probably like a desire for this kind of thing. So the idea comes from Catholicism, of course, because all of my work is very inspired by Catholic art, imagery, aesthetic, all of that good stuff, because that was the tradition I grew up in. Um, my mom is comes from a very Catholic family, very, rigid, and like a lot of decorum, a lot of emphasis on, I like it's funny because there's a lot of biblical um text about not using idolatry and not have forming your beliefs around idols, but I think there's like a very human compulsion to make a thing and then focus your worship around the thing or the iconography. And Catholics are very good at that, very very good at that. We've got our saints, we've got our angels, we've got sacred imagery like the Sacred Heart, all this wonderful stuff. Well, I mean, in terms of aesthetic, and then the dogma is something else. I could talk on for ages about that. Anyways,
no, feel free to talk
Catholics.
on it. I love this
Oh,
conversation.
yeah. I don't want to get too sidetracked on it, so if I get back to that, I will. But Catholics are very good at like making stuff for worship, and there's like a lot of stuff that they make for like portable worship. So I remember looking for. I'd already had this idea for the shrines because I knew that there were Catholics who made like the Altoids tins, the pocket shrines, and of course they do because I actually used to find them in Mexico. There are a lot of vendors who make them by hand out of like found materials. Then there are like the nicer ones that you can find in gift shops. Like maybe it's just like a little coin with a prayer card. Or my grandma had these lovely handmade ones that were literally like cloth sewn around little cardboard backings. So it's like a little book. And then it's got like a little prayer card and actually had a tiny little hook for a very small rosary, literally one like this big. So that's where I got the idea to put mini satanic rosaries in my pocket altars. And what I found is that actually these altars, some version of a pocket shrine has existed for, I don't know if centuries, but like a long time. So you can actually find some version of an old pocket shrine, like a Catholic pocket shrine on eBay or Etsy's like vintage sellers. They do sell them, and a lot of them come in little like metal tins. So you pull them out and you pull out a very small like a little Virgin Mary or a very small Jesus figure or a saint, and they have their own little stand, and you can prop them up and you can pray to them. They maybe have space for a card, and then the nicer ones actually are made of wood, and then you open them up and they're gorgeous, handmade stuff. So that's I wanted something that has like that element, that handmade element, something that was beautiful and something that was meaningful that you could carry around with you.
I was unaware that pocket altars were a thing. I did not know this.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I feel like all religious traditions have some way of carrying your spiritual values with you. Like, well, you don't necessarily need like a thing to do that. It helps to have it. It helps a lot, actually. So I'm sure there's some version of that for other religions, although the Catholic ones are the ones I've found.
Well, I know that Islam started. One big thing about Islam was the repulsion in worshiping items that are made
Mm-hmm.
when it's like that item is not actually holy. That item is just the thing that you made. You should be
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
caring about the religious figures, not the religious figures.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that. I dig it. I like having an object that you just enjoy, not necessarily giving the power to that thing, but just having the
Mm-hmm.
thing to hold and be like, yeah, that's me. That's a thing I like. That's a representation of the personality that I've adopted, that I've manufactured for myself.
Yeah.
I remember seeing this post that said, was it a post? I think it was a post or a message that said like rubbing stones or whatnot. That yeah, don't fall for don't fall for buying a stone that you have to rub for power. And I'm like, oh no, I got this rock that I really enjoy because it's a milestone. I don't know if you can see it, but
Oh.
it's got the measurements of a milestone, and I'm like, oh, I dig
That's
this.
awesome. Literally a milestone. That's pretty
Literally
cool.
a milestone. But I love the pocket altars, and I'm glad that you mentioned being inspired by Catholic art because a lot of the because what's in your pocket altars is a really gorgeous illustrations of Satan, and I just think it's amazing. And you're right, Catholic art, like if you go into like really the old Catholic churches, the art is phenomenal. You don't have
Mhm.
to even worship Catholicism. You don't have to be a Catholic to be able to appreciate how much work was put into these churches.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Like it's so funny because I'm very much like obviously I don't fall into that tradition anymore to the point where like actually stepping into a church gives me like a little bit of ick. I just like there's something about it that just feels kind of like gross and a little bit slimy now. But even now I still have very fond memories of stepping into churches as a kid. Um, so a little bit of history, like this is part of the reason why I'm specifically a Satanist. Um, but in when I my family and I would take yearly trips to Mexico because I'm from Mexico. I was born there. And so we would take trips every summer to visit, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, like everybody is down there. And sometimes we would take trips to other neighboring states. My family is from Distrito Federal, now known as Ciudad de Mexico. It's the state of Mexico that's like the central district, the big city. So we would sometimes go to neighboring states or even neighboring cities. And there's this amazing town called Tasco. And Tasco is a town very known for its silver mines. So when the colonialists came over, they came over, they took everything. They loved the silver mines, of course. So they would take over the town, and basically, they didn't technically own the people there, but basically they owned the people there. And the people there would work like dogs in the silver mines to get all the silver out, and then the Spaniards were like, cool, thanks. And they would take that and bring it back to Spain. But the indigenous silver workers there became very known for their silversmithing. So a lot of their stuff in Tasco is beautiful. So even though the mines are long dried up and they have no more silver in them, the town is still known for its silver artisans. And every year we would go back and see these amazing silver pieces that are still made by like families who've been there for generations, and silversmithing is like their thing. In fact, like my favorite pieces of silver are probably from Tasco. And right now I have a project that is based around a specific religious necklace that you can only get in a region of Oaxaca. Specifically, so Oaxaca is a Mexican state. And this silver necklace, very similar story. They had silver mines, colonists, conquistadors came over, and they also have silver artisans down there in the state. They created a necklace that was based on design elements from Spanish Catholic traditions, and it's called a Yalalog cross necklace. This is a necklace that is unique to the state of Oaxaca, and it's unique to a town called Yalalog. So this necklace is a silver cross, a cross with even sides, actually. So it doesn't have one long bar in the middle, but it actually has 4 holes punched in it. So then the bottom three like prongs of the cross, I guess, each have a cross to symbolize the Holy Trinity. And then this cross is then on a silver chain, and then the silver chain has various design elements. Sometimes it's just silver beads, sometimes it's silver beads separated by little silver crosses. And then the main cross centerpiece itself sometimes has its own design elements. Sometimes it'll have a sacred heart in the middle. But my favorite is actually, it has a little heart with wings. And the heart with wings is to symbolize, I believe, the rooster crowing on the morning of, oh boy, I don't remember if it was Jesus's death or if it was Jesus's resurrection. I think it was the morning of Jesus's resurrection. But it's a very fascinating piece, and I want to create a necklace that's inspired by it, but at the same time not the same thing, because I think like if it's a design that is specific to like an indigenous like sort of practice, I'm like, I don't want to necessarily just steal it and make it profane. I'm like, that is a community's way of growing in their own version of spirituality, because spirituality in Mexico is a very complicated thing, very, very complicated. I think I got sidetracked, but like I guess my main point was that I find so much beauty in that ability to tell a story through a piece of jewelry or through a piece of art, even if it's a spiritual one, and even if it's a religion that I don't necessarily identify with or even love, because that spirituality, even though it may be a shared religion, every single piece I think carries a little bit of the soul of the artist. If that makes any sense.
It does, and I don't think you got sidetracked.
Mm-hmm.
I think that all the story that you told is exactly the story that is necessary to build the art, to create the art,
Mhm.
because it's not just an artist being like, you know what, I have an idea. It's all of the culture behind the idea that gives the person the passion to create it and have the fortitude to finish it. Because a lot of artists, I know we're both artists, so there's a
Mhm.
lot of projects that you start and you're like, you know what, I don't want to finish this thing.
Oh
But
God, yeah.
there are other things that you need the passion to be able to finish, to see it all the way through. And I appreciate the fact that you're not just going to be like yoink, that you're not taking this one idea and then finding
Mhm.
a way to to make it satanic, but
Mhm.
you're being inspired by this thing and figuring out your own way to be able to still connect your piece with the cultural background of the piece that you appreciate.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think like part of that comes from like a lot of the new connections I've made over the past year. I've met so many like amazing, practitioners of all kinds of like witchcraft and sorcery and all that good stuff. And I think the most surprising connections I've made this year are from folk Catholics. They have all the aesthetics of like an evil witch, like darkness and like gothic shit and like wearing like all the rosaries and stuff, but their practices are still technically Catholic because they pray to and do spells and work with Catholic saints and Jesus and all that stuff. And I remember being like, how does that work? And I realized that we actually have a lot more in common than I would have expected. So it's been a real joy getting to know some of these people and seeing their practices and seeing that they even like my work, which is really cool. It's really nice to have at least that in common, even if it's like, maybe it's more like we've got like we're on opposing teams of a football game.
I guess I just really enjoy anyone being able to appreciate the artistry of any kind of, like, you don't have to be a part of that culture, you don't have to be a part of that religion, and still be like, that's cool. I like your work.
Mm.
That's I dig it. I think that's how the world should be, where you don't have to agree on everything, but you can still appreciate what someone has created.
Definitely.
If you were to make a pocket Santa altar, because it's December, we were thinking about Christmas, I guess. If you celebrate Christmas, then you're thinking about Christmas, or the winter solstice, Saturnalia, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, any kind of holiday, anything that you're doing to celebrate the winter and the end of the year. I'm sure you're thinking about that. But in America, in the U.S., yeah, I guess around the world, Santa's a big thing, right?
Hmm.
Okay, cool. Capitalism, capitalism, commercialism, all the big fun things. If you were to make a pocket Santa altar, which Santa would you choose? And I primarily mean like maybe a movie Santa or a cartoon Santa, that sort of thing. But if you figure it out, if you found like a good like drawing of Santa that you choose, that works as well.
Oh, definitely. So I did think about this one. Um, I love the idea of a Santa altar, first of all. If I were to make it in my style, I think I would go like almost like a Norman Rockwell, like Americana sort of deal, because it's like a very warm, like inspiring, art, very wholesome. But I want to go for a Santa that's just like a tiny bit more regal. So like maybe not like the jolly, like fluffy Santa, but like a Santa who's got like he's a little more regal. He's got like this big, flowing like overcoat, and his nose is a little chapped from going door to door with his presence, but he still feels like really warm and inviting. So I would go for a piece that exemplifies like this very noble ideal of Santa. Oh my goodness, I would decorate it to feel like the Christmas spirit. So it would probably have like a little bit of tinsel. Maybe there's like a roaring fireplace for like the other icon. Maybe there's like a little scroll in there so you can write your note to Santa. Some Jingle bells on a silver chain was like my biggest idea. Like just a very small chain with like a couple little silver jingle bells. Maybe I don't think people pray to Santa. God, I hope not. But maybe if there's something you really want on your wish list, like this is what you're doing. You're holding your little jingle bells and you're writing what you want on your note.
You said you hope no one prays to Santa, right?
Yeah.
Is that not what people do? They write letters to
mean,
Santa.
I mean, like praying. I feel like it's. I don't know. Is it different from praying to a deity? Oh God!
I
Now that
don't
I
know
think about
anymore.
it,
I didn't think that they prayed.
the
I did
line
not
is
think that.
pretty. Yeah.
Oh, go on. Oh, I was going. Okay, I was going to say
Yeah.
I did not think that people prayed to Santa until you mentioned it, and I'm like, oh no. I think they do.
I think people do pray to Santa on some level. Yeah.
Prior to Santa, he was Saint Nicholas, right?
Oh yeah. I don't. Is he a canonized saint? Well, not that that really matters. I don't put a lot of stock into what the Catholic Church says, but
Sure.
yeah.
But
Oh God.
but now I'm
He could
really
be.
thinking about it. I didn't really. It never crossed my mind until
Oh my
now.
God. He could be considered like a folk saint at this point. He might as well be an icon to be prayed to.
I mean, that's people go to someone dressed up as Santa and they they tell them what they want for Christmas, and it's like that seems kind of religious.
It's yeah. Honestly, that actually makes sense now.
I'm glad you said Norman Rockwell because in your other pocket altars, I do notice that the lighting is very soft. It's not really
Hmm.
dramatic lighting, and I think Norman Rockwell would be a damn good comparison. Having that kind of just, I like it that you said warm because I warm is a better word than soft.
Hmm.
Very warm lighting, very inviting, and very just feel good lighting.
Hmm.
Nothing too dramatic and extreme. And I have you seen the movie Jingle Jangle? I
I
think it's
haven't.
Jingle Jangle. It's a Netflix movie and it's a Christmas movie, and I love a lot of the art in that one just because it's a lot of detail, a lot of ornate details, even in the costumes, just a bunch of lines on everything, and it's just gorgeous because it looks like a very classic Christmas card come to life. And so when you're describing of how you would decorate the Santa altar, that's what I was thinking of. That movie is what I was thinking of, and I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
Okay, sure. I'll definitely check it out now that we're officially in like the holly jolly season and stuff.
Oh, I wait until December to watch any of that shit. I'm not. It's not gonna invade. First of all, it's not gonna invade my October because
Oh, hell no.
Guillermo del Toro made a show called Cabinet of Curiosities.
Oh yeah.
They have a Christmas episode, and I was like, nope.
We're waiting. We're gonna wait until it's actually December.
Not gonna watch that. It's October. No, thank you.
Hmm.
But I don't want maybe well known because your title is Unholy Rosaries.
Yeah.
Would that be safe to say that that's what you're known for?
Yes. That's the main thing I'm known for is the Satanic Rosaries.
When did you, and they are extremely amazing. One of my favorite
Oh,
things
thank you.
about your rosaries, and I'm looking forward to hearing your process
Hmm.
because what's really neat about the rosaries is that there's an element of repetition in jewelry, but it also seems like very spontaneous when you decide where certain gems or certain beads are going to go, and it's just I I always admire art that I don't understand. Not that I don't understand it. It's just that it's not my thing. And so when I see someone so good at it, I'm like, this is amazing. This is
Hmm.
phenomenal. So I want to start with when did you start making jewelry?
So I guess I started making like jewelry in 2019, like the ends of 2018 to 2019 is when I started. Um, so basically what happened is that around that time was like my satanic conversion slash deconversion, more or less. I had already become an atheist by like 2012 and went through like the hardcore of like, I don't believe in anything. Religion is a poison on society, like that thing that a lot of people go through. And I think a lot of people in the satanic community have gone through that. But then we found Satanism. We're like, huh, all right.
I guess.
I guess, yeah, exactly. So in 2018, a couple things happened. One, I got into Ghost really hardcore, and that was when I discovered the band Ghost, and I was like, oh shit, the aesthetics of worshiping the devil with like the sort of inverted Catholic trope, like that's so cool, that's so edgy, I love that. And then because I was so obsessed with them, I got really into looking at their stuff online, and then somebody posted some art in a Ghost subreddit, and I'm like, oh, I want to see what other art they've posted. And I saw they did a lot of posting on our Satanism on the Satanism subreddit. I was like, you can do that. you can just have a religion around the devil. Like I thought that wasn't a real thing, and it is a real thing as it turns out. Cool story. Anyways, I got really into that, realized I was a Satanist, and then by around that's when like end of 2018, I was like, I'm gonna make a rosary, but the devil. So I bought my first materials at Michael's, and I practiced, and I made my very first rosary, which I still have and I still wear. It's a little bit janky, but I still love it because it's my first one. And that December, I decided to make a bunch of legit rosaries for my family members. So I was like, oh, it's cool. Like I can do both. So I made some for my family members, and they loved them. And they were like, if you're really good at this, like maybe we should consider selling them. I'm like, I should sell them. I didn't tell them which ones I was going to sell, but I should sell them. And around 2019 is when I actually made my first pieces to sell on Etsy. And that's when things started very slowly. They took off, but they did eventually take off. And it's been a wild ride since then, I gotta say.
And it's funny that you say, well, because like first of all, you said that your first one is kind of janky.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that everyone knows that you have to start, and I think Adventure Time said really well. You gotta start shit. It's just know that you're gonna start bad, and you're gonna get better as you go.
Oh yeah, exactly. I think it was something like sucking at something is the first step at being kind of good at something, and yeah, that's totally true.
And I feel that way because I just started like a YouTube channel of teaching people how to draw, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm not that good at making videos, but I'm gonna try, and I'm gonna keep on working on getting better at it.
Oh, it's a learning curve. I don't know the first thing about video making. I have I think exactly 2 public TikToks on my TikTok account that I put a lot of time and effort into, and I was just like, this is hard. I don't want to do this all the time.
And it is because like I have ideas of different like TikTok videos I want to do, but every time I get to it, I'm like, or I could just not do it.
Exactly. It's a process, and I really like the 2 videos I have. One of them is promoting the Satanic coloring book, and then the other one is a very small process video for one of my pieces I made. And while I do like how it turned out, I'm like, that was a lot of effort. I'm very tired.
I love the idea of taking different religious things, religious attributes or objects, and making them satanic. I really dig it because I feel, and this is why I really enjoy the Christmas season, is that there's so many different elements of different cultures wrapped up into one to make one like weird holiday. Just the trees, the ornaments, the guy on a sleigh with reindeers. It's all bizarre. And I feel like it's one of those holidays that is just a potpourri of weird shit and magic.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Ever since I started learning more about like how Christianity sort of like saw a bunch of pagan traditions and was like, we gotta compete with the pagans. Yoink! And like they had like no respect for taking those things. And I was just like, that's actually kind of fun. That like now I can really celebrate the Christmas tree. I'm like, that is so cool. I love the idea of the Christmas tree, the whole Yule log thing. I mean, even like I don't know, like I think even like the Christmas Carol thing like comes from various other traditions. Like it's all over the place. And I was just like, I definitely don't feel bad for taking Christian traditions or Catholic things and making them satanic because I'm like, you guys do it all the time, so why should you care?
Exactly. Don't feel bad because I mean, if they do it, then sure, you're giving me permission, I guess, if you can do it. And I'm because I've been often thinking about doing one time when I was doing Hanukkah and lighting the menorah, I was like, man, this would be really easy to make this into a Baphomet head because you have like the middle candle and then you have the horns, and I'm like, if I could put candles on the horns, that'd be pretty badass.
That would be awesome. The only thing I have with that is that like, it would look a little too much like a reindeer.
If it could,
It
easily
could.
could.
Yeah, you have to really make it like this is a goat. This has a goat head. And then like the middle candle is of course the torch and stuff. That's pretty cool.
I feel like the only way it would really work, because you're right. I think that if you make the candles too much like the horns, it will be a reindeer.
Yes.
The only way that it can work is you have to dramatically make it different between the horns and the candles. Like if the candles are red and the horns are gray, that could work. You have to make it clear that they're different.
Yeah, exactly. Experiment a little bit with color and such.
Because just as right now where you described it being a reindeer, I'm like, oh shit, you're right. Because I'm just thinking of the visual.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you still do legit rosaries?
No, I haven't
Okay.
made a legit rosary, I think in like probably since 2019. It's because once my shop actually took off and I was starting to make them more, my mom, so sweet, was like, "Oh, we're with your dad's work friends and we told them about your shop and we want to show them what you make." At that point, I was still trying to keep it a secret and I had told my parents that, I was selling jewelry and then just left it at that. I wouldn't show them a lot of finished pieces. My mom had actually commissioned me to make a couple of legitimate Catholic rosaries for her friends at the time. So I showed her my shop, my real shop, because I was like, at that time, I actually made a fake shop to sell like legit rosaries, and that was the one I showed my parents. But I was like, they're gonna get suspicious if I show them that shop and it has zero sales when they've seen me packaging and making stuff at night, and then they'll be like, oh, that's weird. So I was just like, I can't hide it forever, so fuck it. So I sent them the real shop, and my dad was like, oh, that's so cool, and my mom didn't say anything for like 2 weeks. And then I never got another commission for a legit Catholic rosary again. And I'm like, I'm fine with that. I don't really mind.
I was looking through your Instagram, coming up with all these questions, and I would love to talk about Baphomet, blasphemy, right?
Blasphemy, yeah. Oh my god.
How was that? Because I saw you've done it a few times, right? Like there was. Is it once a year? Because I feel like I saw 2 in 1 year.
Yeah. So here's the thing: the very first blasphemy happened this May. So I have not been in the vendor circuit ever until that first blasphemy. I had never sold anything in person because when I started selling rosaries in 2019, I just did online that first year. And then, of course, in 2020, something happened and we couldn't do in person events. Weirdly enough. Plus, I was also like, where the hell am I going to sell these? I can't go in person to the neighborhood craft fair and be like, do you want to buy some Satan? Like, that's not really the vibe. I'm probably not gonna get a lot of sales. I'm probably gonna get some angry villagers with torches and pitchforks.
I think you can. I think you can do it, but just know that you are gonna have some dicks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not about that kind of drama. So I was like, whatever. Maybe there are like some places where I can sell that. I had known about the Oddities flea market that happens in LA, I think a couple times a year. They're like a big market because I know they've got locations in New York too. So I was like, oh, maybe one day I will sell there. But I didn't know anything about that. And then lo and behold, I don't remember how many months out this was, in February or March. I get a DM from somebody called, I forget if it was Coma Witch. I think it was Coma Witch. And she has been in the vendor circuit for a number of years. Like, well, it's her side hustle. She makes a lot of income from it, and she's very seasoned and she's very experienced and she's very well known and well liked by people. So it was all her idea that she wanted to put together this market that was specifically for like the darker side of the oddities circuit, because oddities is a very wide encompassing demographic, and like just gothic markets are a little more like light, if I'm being honest. So she wanted like the goths, she wanted the darkness, she wanted witches, she wanted like Satanists, she wanted like actual Satanists, she wanted like the underbelly. So she was reaching out to a lot of people she admired on Instagram, and she liked my stuff. So she was like, hey, we wanted to know if you were interested in doing this in-person event. It's our first time ever, but let us know if you're interested by this date and we'll provide you with all the information. And I was just like I had to think about it because I'd never sold my stuff in person before, and I'm like, I've never done one of these things. Oh my God, what do I do? So I thought it over. I talked about it with my partner. I was like, okay, yeah, let's give it a shot and see how it goes. And especially, I noticed the kind of people that she was starting to recruit, and I was like, okay, this can work. Like, if they generate the kind of traffic that wants to see this stuff, they're gonna love my stuff. So, May rolled around, and oh my God, the process of actually getting my table ready was hilarious because I was just stressing for I think like the last 2 months up to Blasphemy. I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? I don't know how to set up a table. What's my display gonna look like? How am I going to arrange things? I've never done this before. Like, why would they ask me? But finally, I got all my things together, and the event rolls around, and I gotta say, this event like spoiled me for all future like vending events, because I talked to some of the people there, and they're like, honestly, we're really, really excited about this because nobody else we've ever sold with has put this amount of time and effort and dedication into making sure we know what's going on, that we know what to do, and that we feel comfortable vending here. Most places, which what I later learned doing my second event ever, most places are just like, send us an application, and you send your application and you hear nothing for weeks. And then one day an email will just show up and they'll be like, you were accepted, send us $200. And then maybe the night before the event, they'll be like, here's how you sell your stuff, come. And then you get no other communication. This does vary between organizers, but wow, the difference between going to Blasphemy and then going to the other event that I went to, my second one ever, miles away. Not that it was a bad experience, but I was like, wow, this is different. Anyways, Blasphemy I think is unique because Coma Witch or Senzia and Cody are the organizers, the main organizers, because there are other people working behind the scenes, but they're like the main, like the brains behind the operation. They really invest a lot of time in making sure that we feel like a community and that we feel like we can rely on each other. Because while vendors and artists know each other and are willing to help each other out, it has been just a treat to see that they've kind of created almost like a little witchy occult family. And we're not as anxious about setting up, because it's like, oh yeah, someone's got lights, someone's got something that you can clamp your table to. I've got information for you about parking. Like it's like a constant stream of like ways to help each other out. And then we hype each other up after after Blasphemy is over, and we're also constantly talking about ways we can improve. It has been fantastic. And in addition to that, they have before Blasphemy, they have been having a mixer and a ritual the night before the market. And this has been amazing. This has been absolutely amazing for, like I said, creating that sense of community and even like a sense of hype, so that when we come in, we're like just like game on, um the first one I went to was just spellbinding. Like not like I mean, I know that sounds like a pun, but like straight up spellbinding. Because Cody's an occult practitioner, a lot of people there are occult practitioners, so he used a lot of what he's studied and his own practices to create a ritual that felt inclusive and meaningful for everybody who's there. And yeah, I was like, oh my god, how do I get more of this? How do I get into this and even more? So yeah, and then they did it again for this last Blasphemy. So this was the second time ever. It was bigger, it was better, fantastic, and yeah, the ritual beforehand was also pretty amazing.
I really enjoy hearing that, because I feel like when there are groups that you said that the oddities one is cool, but then you want the other people that are still shunned by a lot of organizations, a lot of groups, because there is an anxiety where it's like, I've got this drawing of Satan that I don't want anyone giving me drama about. And you get this like anxiety of like, where can I show this thing and not worry about anyone attacking me? And I like it that this organization, this Blasphemy, sounds like the reason why they're so helpful to make sure that there's no anxiety is because they know that anxiety, they know that worry, and so they're trying to show you how comfortable it can be when everyone is just welcoming and just supportive. That's beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's been amazing, and I hope to just continue seeing all of these familiar faces for future events that I eventually do.
One of your posts said, one of your posts on your Instagram said, you described how amazing it is to hold silver-plated hematite, and you're like, oh, you have no idea how it feels to be in your hands, this thing. I would like to find out. I would like to hear you describe it.
Okay, sure. It's probably one of my favorite beads to work with right now, which is why I just can't get over it. Every time I hold it, I'm like, oh my god, it's so wonderful. Hematite's like a heavy sort of like metallic bead. And so a lot of places will actually plate it with like even there's gold plated hematite, which I also make stuff with, but silver's probably my favorite because silver's got this wonderful like cool softness to it. So it feels heavy and cold, but also like soft and like smooth in your hands. So it's got this wonderful feeling, and definitely just like holding them in your hands and just wrapping them around your hands, it feels like amazing. It like stone feels great. I love stone. Glass, like good quality glass, is really nice, but that is probably my favorite because of like the weight and feel of the beads.
Yeah, you talked about how much you love the feeling of beads, because what is the process? And I mentioned this earlier that I was going to ask you about.
Oh yeah.
This, because of how much I'm amazed at how you're able to do repetition, but also make it seem spontaneous and it's gorgeous. What is your process of making a rosary?
It depends really. So say I'm making like a piece just for the shop. If I'm feeling particularly inspired, like sometimes like an idea will just pop into my head and I'll be like, oh hell yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to make. These are the beads I'm going to use. This is the pendant I'm using. Sometimes it all comes together and I have all the materials, so then I can just work nonstop. Sometimes I'm making a commission for a client, because I do a lot of commission work right now, and that can be a lengthy process because some people come in with a very good idea of what they want, and some people are like, this is the icon I love, but I don't really know what beads go well with this. I was wondering if you could help me out with that. And that's also something I do help out with. So I can help them select beads. I'll ask them, what colors do you like? What stones do you like? And I do a little searching online. I give them photos. I give them prices. Um, if I'm like making something just for the shop and I want to be inspired and I want to make a unique piece, sometimes I'll even look online at Catholic rosaries. And I'll be like, okay, let's see what sells well for like red glass. I want to see like, especially like I want to play a lot with like shape and color and light. Um, there's this interesting idea when I work with beads, and I try to rid myself of this idea because I realize how silly it can be. I have this idea that like what I make is not like real jewelry making, and I know that sounds silly, but
Yes, I want to make that clear that it's silly to say that about your jewelry, your amazing jewelry. It is jewelry.
Yeah, so I have this idea because I'm like, oh, I'm just buying stuff that's already made and I put it together. But I have to like rid myself of that idea, and I'm doing a better job of it now because I'm like, well, not everybody has these ideas to put these colors with these pendants or to use these materials or to use these bead styles. Maybe you're using flex wire cords, maybe you're using the original chain style. Like beadwork is actually like real jewelry designing because you have to understand how a piece flows and how things go together. So let's take one of my favorite pieces recently. It is made with red check glass beads, because we're actually kind of on the more expensive sides for beads. And they have these wonderful little facets in them. So while they almost look like cubes, they almost look like square little beads, they actually have cut facets on the side. So they're almost like beveled edges. And then the tops of the beads have these little like almost like star-shaped caps that are like molded into the beads. And I don't know how they made them, but they have like this sort of like dusty, almost metallic coloring on the top. So it gives the beads a very antique like feel to them. They are gorgeous beads, and I made a beautiful necklace with them. I paired them with a red enamel inverted cross, and because it was such a big cross, I had to use a bigger connector piece. So I chose a nice chunky like pentagram to connect it to. That was one of my favorite pieces that I made. I actually finished it at Blasphemy on the second day because I didn't have time to make it beforehand, and I was like, oh, I just want somebody to see this. I want somebody to see this in person. And while it didn't sell at the market, when I put it up online, it sold fairly quickly. And that's just kind of like what I think about is just like, how can I create like a cohesive piece, a piece that goes together well?
And I think it's absolutely amazing. The colors you choose, the types of beads you choose, I love. Whenever I see any kind of post on Instagram, it's inspiring. It really is. I love looking through your artwork and seeing what you're coming up with. And even though we haven't, it's been a while since we've actually talked.
Mhm.
I have definitely stalked and lurked in your social media to see what's going on. Um, have you ever interacted with like someone to, because like you do have a lot of really cool Baphomet objects on, like, I don't even know I don't know the terminology in jewelry, but
Mhm.
at the end of your rosaries, there's a
Mhm.
lot of really cool Baphomet stuff. Have you specifically found people to sculpt that, or how do you find such really cool items?
Oh my God, I wish. I would love to make my own pieces someday. Actually, that's something I'm not like seriously researching that right now, but I am like sort of like doing a little bit of Google searching and taking some of the tips that I've gotten from artists that actually like do like like silversmithing or pewter smithing, and that's the kind of stuff I'm really into. I have so many ideas for that, but I can't do that just yet. So what I do is I search on eBay, and I search, well, now Amazon has actually taken up a lot of the manufacturers that used to sell on eBay. But that's another story. There are
Yeah.
actually quite a few manufacturers of like occult style like pendants and stuff. So I do I do a lot of searching in those areas, and sometimes I'll find really, really nice pieces. I try to keep the price points fairly like manageable because when you do everything by hand, the price goes up. It's just how it is, unfortunately. I would love to make my pieces more accessible, which is why I'm experimenting with littler things like earrings and chokers and bracelets, because the necklaces are the big sellers, but I want people to be able to, if they can't afford a necklace, maybe get a choker, something like that.
Just a thought, if you do the 3D printing to make a mold, then you can do resin, and that could be a thing.
Resin is a good idea. I always wonder about the longevity of resin
That's
when
fair.
it's paired with metallic findings. So
Yeah.
like jump rings. Everything I use is stainless steel. So stainless steel is obviously very hard. Resin is, my guess, not as hard as stainless steel. While I love resin, it's probably not the material I'm going to choose for a metal jewelry piece. That is the stuff I usually work with. Um, but I like the idea of maybe using the stuff that is available for resin kits. So they make a lot of silicone molds online and stuff. So and they also sell silicone mold kits so that you can make your own silicone molds. I have been wondering about the possibility of using silver clay to possibly make some of my own pendants or connector pieces, but silver clay is a rough thing to start with. As much as I love the medium, I'm like, oh, like I need a kiln or a butane torch, and I don't want to set my balcony on fire.
Yeah.
Like,
No, that's a fair worry. You also have amazing art in your Instagram. You make gorgeous stickers. You
oh, thank
make
you.
gorgeous images. And when I was scrolling through it, I did see an apple with a snake around it. It said "Take a bite." And I'm like, that looks so
Oh yeah.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I like that one. I haven't remade those stickers in a while, but yeah, everything I make right now is fairly satanic inspired, of course.
I love it that because like a lot of times when people draw snakes, the snakes are really thin. So I like seeing a chunky snake. It was really cool to see, and I'm like, oh, I want to draw some thick snakes.
Yeah, yeah. Snakes, I think a lot of people think of like snakes as like this thin, wiggly, wispy thing. That's not the case for all snakes. Like, sure,
Yeah.
I happen to know a lot about snakes because I'm obsessed with them. I love them. I have two of my own. They're lovely animals. And my main boy is a chonky ball python. His name is Toffee. And I was just so inspired by, like the way his coils move when he's like curled up or maybe when he's in motion. So I'm like, and he needs a lot of overlap and, you need to feel like a snake has weight. So that's how I tend to try to draw my snakes.
I just never really thought about it like that, and it has changed. It's definitely something that I'm going to consider when drawing a snake.
Oh yeah,
I
oh yeah.
appreciate that that realization that you gave me of like, ah, damn, my snakes could be thicker.
Hmm.
Um, so then that brings me to this question of the apple being like, having a snake around an apple. That's the whole what was it, the forbidden fruit, the
Yeah.
original sin of getting the
Hmm.
apple in Eden. If the Tree of Knowledge were a movie, what movie would keep Adam and Eve away from it? Because, in the garden, God's like, don't eat, you can eat everything else except for that fruit. Don't eat that fruit. And it's like, why not that fruit? But if you made it a movie, it's like, what movie would make it so that there's no temptation
Oh man.
for
I
you?
had so I had a couple of answers because I'm like, one movie I actually haven't seen, but I want to see, and I feel like this movie does fit the prompt perfectly. And then I have the other one is a movie I have seen and also fits the prompt, not as perfectly, but pretty good. The first one is definitely Alejandro Jodorowsky's The Holy Mountain. It is a cult film classic. It is, how to describe what it's about, if you're going plot wise, it's about an alchemist who takes seven irredeemable strangers and a Christ like figure up to a mountain to discover the secrets of immortality. Um, but that is like the barest summary of what's going on in that movie because good fucking God, is there stuff going on in that movie. It is an absurdist art film from the 70s. So, there's a guy who poops into a receptacle and then the alchemist turns it into gold. And then he's like, you are literal shit and I can turn you into gold. And the guy is like, cool. Also, he's the Jesus figure of this movie. And there's also a part where he goes to sleep and some nuns cast him in like plaster, and then he wakes up and there's all of these Jesuses that look exactly like him, and he's like, oh god. And then they sell the Jesuses, and then there's a scene where he eats Jesus's face, and it's a little weird, and then he sends it up into the heavens on a balloon, and you're like, well, what am I watching? So I think Adam and Eve would see that and be like, put it back.
I don't know. I'm very tempted to watch this.
No, I like, that's why I want to see it, is because it's like, it's heavy on the symbolism about like what religion is, what religion does to culture, what it does to the human experience, to the human spirit. It's got a lot of like occult references. It's got references to the planets as symbolized in astrology, as symbolized in Greek, in Greek and Roman like traditions. It's got like tarot card symbolism. It's got all sorts of wonderful, trippy, psychedelic stuff. It's got a lot of commentary on society in general. I do know that there's a lizard in a costume at some point, and I'm like, that's great. And the guy's a brilliant director, and this specific work has influenced so many other filmmakers and artists over the years, because it's so profound and so absurd and so interesting and powerful in many, many ways.
What would be your words of advice to anyone who is interested in making jewelry based in a community or a subject that they feel would be shunned, or that they'd be attacked, that people would be like, oh, you shouldn't do that thing?
Just make it. Like, just make it anyways, because even if you don't end up like making something for other people or to sell, like, you don't lose anything by just making something personal. I've seen so many like pieces on our Satanism of people who make rosaries for themselves, and I love seeing those pieces because there's like, you see a little bit of like what each person's aesthetic is. Sometimes they follow the exact rosary like structure, because rosaries have a very specific structure of 5 decades for what they call Our Father beads, and then there's the center prayer chain. Like there's a whole system to creating a quote unquote real rosary. And then some people like decide to break the mold. They'll make different decades. Sometimes they'll add an extra decade because maybe that number has more meaning to them. Sometimes it's all in one color. Sometimes it's all of the colors. It's really cool. Like, especially like in satanic circles, like I think like the piece of jewelry has a lot of meaning, because for us the aesthetic is very important. So having a piece of jewelry that means something to you and also looks cool as hell is like part of it. So definitely in our circles, we happen to have the jewelry that makes people go like, ugh. Like, I've worn my rosaries in public a couple of times, and the only time I really get that reaction is where I'm wearing the classic inverted cross with like the pentagram as the connector, and people are like, ugh, and then they just kind of like leave. Thankfully, I haven't had like a real like altercation with everybody, and I'm very grateful for that. And I know that probably isn't the case for everybody. Some people might live in a place where people are very vocal about that and do not mind giving you exactly what they think about that devil jewelry you're wearing. And so like, even so, like I say, just make it for yourself. Like, you don't owe anything to anybody because it's yours. So like, and plus, there's something so spiritual about your hands touching every part of the thing you made and taking part in that act of creation. Because once you take a bunch of beads and some wire and then you actually turn it into something beautiful, like that's fantastic,